I'd like to contend with you. I'd like to make an argument that if you want to find more time in your life, you should destroy all of your to-do lists. Now that might really freak some people out. I recall an assistant principal that worked at Shakopee High School when I was working there as a teacher. And every time I walked into her office, I'd look at her monitor and it was just filled completely with Post-it notes scattered all across the entire monitor. In fact, if people actually followed what I suggest on this video, Post-it notes might go out of business because we love our to-do lists, don't we? We really enjoy creating a list of different things to be able to do, and there's some satisfaction that comes along from checking off each piece on that list. Yet, I'm not too sure if this is the best way for us to go about our business. Here's what I've noticed in my life when I look at to-do lists. Number one, there's no time allocation on any of the things that I've put on my to-do list. So I really don't know how long certain things are going to take, and I just work on one at a time until it's finished. So there's not really a tremendous amount of urgency that goes along. Number two, I've noticed that oftentimes there's no sense of prioritization. I haven't figured out, what is most important and second most important, what might be most urgent. I just kind of pick and choose, and sometimes it's based on how I feel. Number three, I've noticed that no matter how hard I work and how long my day is, I never finish my to-do list. It's never done. There's always 2 or 3 things that are hanging on at the end. And oftentimes these 2 or 3 things are the ones that are hanging on day after day after day, which creates the number 4 thing that I've noticed about my to-do lists. I create stress and anxiety that's undue because I keep worrying about these things that never get done off of the to-do list. Well, I'd like to make an argument that we get rid of those and we replace our to-do lists by putting our things we're supposed to do into our calendars. You see, if you did a survey to some of the most successful people across the entire United States of America, you'd recognize they have a lot of things in common. But one of the things they have in common is the importance of following a calendar and calendaring almost everything in their entire lives. Here's some powerful things that come from calendaring your to-do lists. First off, we reduce stress and anxiety. We don't have to worry about getting that done or getting this done because it's in our calendar. So when we finish work, we can close down the laptop and just kind of shut off and go home and not worry or stress about the 2 or 3 or 4 things that are left on your to-do list. It's in the calendar. It's going to get done. The second thing that putting our to-do list in the calendar accomplishes for us is it creates a sense of focus. It's in our calendar, and we know that this is designated time for us to really hone in and give our full attention to this particular project or activity that we're working on. The stats will tell you that we are distracted about every 8 minutes in our working life. And that's terrible. I don't know how we get anything done, honestly. But one strategy we can use to focus more is using our calendars more and being more in tune at taking the things we need to do and putting them onto our calendars. Another reason I think that using calendars instead of to-do lists is powerful for us is because of something called the Parkinson's Law. Now, many of us are probably familiar with Parkinson's disease, something we would wish not on anybody at all. But Parkinson's Law comes from an author, Cecil Parkinson, from the 1950s. And he said this, the law is this: work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. In other words, whatever time we've allocated to a certain project or task, that task or project will fill up the time. Let me bring this home for a minute. How many of you have been to a meeting and you show up to something that's been scheduled for an hour and a half and you recognize that on the agenda there's not very much and you get a little bit excited? You're like, hey, this is great. We're going to be able to go through these agenda items very quickly and then we'll get out of here early. Well, you all know the reality of what happens, don't you? We start working on these agenda items and suddenly whatever we have on the agenda, we add to or we expand until it fills up that whole 90 minutes we were allocating to it. So we really don't end up with any free time at all. The power of using a calendar is we have to decide how much time certain things are going to take up. For example, if I'm writing a proposal or a bid for a company, I might have to think in my mind a little bit, hey, this is going to take an hour, and then I put it into my calendar. And the really powerful piece about this is that's as long as the time it takes. In fact, just the other day I was working on preparing a new presentation, a topic I really haven't presented on before. And in that, I needed to not just develop the materials and the content, I needed to go through and create a PowerPoint. In addition to that, create a handout for the participants. Now, I knew this was a large task, and I allocated about 3 hours for me to complete all of this. And I was just busting through it. I mean, really trying my very hardest to get everything done that I possibly could in that allocated time, because I wasn't too sure if that was going to be enough time. Sure enough, at 2 hours and 58 minutes, I'd hit the save button and the print button on the document that I was creating for the handout. And then I looked at the time. I was amazed. And that's truly just an example of how Parkinson's law works. It's going to fill up the same amount of time that we allocate to it. So my invitation for you today, in fact, right now, pull out that to-do list, whether you keep it on a Post-it note or whether you keep it on your phone or wherever you may have it. You've got it. I know you do. And start taking every item and putting them into your calendar. It will force you to prioritize. It will force you to time allocate and put some constraints around that. And everything that you move will reduce the amount of anxiety and stress you might have over all the things you need to get done. I hope it works for you. I've been using it for about a year and it works wonderfully for me. Thank you and have a fantastic day.